Hello and welcome to Grinding Meeting number 32, the Carnivore Diet, Pseudo-Kryptonite, and a War of Attrition. Hope you're all doing well on this Sunday. Let me just make sure that my stuff is coming through. Should be hearing my voice come back at me here in just a second, because you know I always love that. Welcome to Grinding. Yep, that's it. This is one that I've been wanting to do for a while, but for some reason, I wasn't sure if it fit into a grinding meeting, but in the sense that we seem to have like a baseline amount of suffering that's normal for us as an individual, and we kind of need it. And if you reduce it without replacing it, because that's kind of the goal, is to replace unnecessary suffering with suffering for a purpose, you know, working towards a goal, putting in the hard work. This is not a story of putting in the hard work. This is a story of me touching a hot stove over and over again over the span of 5 years at least, to where I finally learned, like, don't do that. It's bad. I do need to give some disclaimers, although you would think that the channel name would cover the fact that I'm not presenting myself as a expert. You'd think that might be enough, but I really do need to say my experience by eliminating virtually all plant-based food from my diet I'm anomalous to the extreme. I would guess maybe 1% of the population would have the experience that I had. If there's anything I would advocate, it would be a diagnostic carnivore diet, just to see if you're one of those, see if you're in that 1%. Although I think significantly more than that might benefit. I'll get into explaining why near the end, but I thought I would first go through the list of benefits I got from eliminating, particularly grains. Getting rid of the grains is where I got most of the benefit, but it kind of goes on from there. So I used to suffer from cluster headaches. They were bad. Cluster headaches there isn't really a big distinction between a cluster headache and a migraine, except that they come in clusters. They're not like they're clustered around in different parts of your head. It's that you'll have a period of time, typically weeks, where it comes and goes constantly, and it's typically behind one of your eyes, but like when it gets really intense, it's kind of like smashing one finger with a hammer. Right after you did it, you swear you smashed like 3 hammers, but like the pain is turned up to 11 and it tends to bleed over into other areas. So severe like migraine, cluster headache pain will just rob you of like your dignity, your mind, your ability. I'm just gonna be running around like looking for herbs. It just steals your life from you, because you really can't do anything else but deal with that at the moment. And those are gone. I have somewhat, my spine kind of takes a little jog around my shoulder blades, so I have some scoliosis issues that I've had to deal with. And reducing the inflammation has all but made like my scoliosis based back troubles disappear. Also had a lot of joint pain. I've always worked physically demanding jobs that basically beat the crap out of your body, and reducing the inflammation caused by foods my body doesn't like. God damn it. extraction has really helped that. One of the ways I coped with it, because, you know, physically demanding job and, you know, crooked spine, is I got very reliant on over-the-counter pain relief. Primarily ibuprofen, naproxen sodium, and acetaminophen, and those are all really not good for you. And I took them, and you should never exceed what's on the bottle without, you know, a doctor telling you to. And I did that, and I really can't recommend it. But when you're in pain, you'll do anything. Especially this was for the cluster headaches. When it feels like you've got a knife, like the pain is spread so much that it feels like you have a knife that has been pushed up through your jaw, behind your eye, and someone is just kind of like slowly twisting it. It's absolutely horrible. And in that state, you will make bad decisions to just whatever it takes to make the pain go away, or at least not be so bad. I mean, you can't escape it into sleep. It's still, even if you do manage to fall asleep. And the worst thing about the cluster headaches is, if you are active and doing stuff and moving around, it's not as bad. But if you become inactive, like trying to fall asleep, it almost always makes it worse. Also, I think it's also affected by blood pressure. So if you try to get horizontal, that also makes it worse. So it not only has you in pain, but if you try to sleep, just even becoming more, trying to get more relaxed or even get into a non-vertical position, it just cranks the knob up on it, and it's just horrible. And I feel like I have survivor's guilt, because there's so many people out there that are still suffering from this, and I don't have to anymore. And that is entirely gone. And I'm telling you not to exceed the over-the-counter pain medication dosage, but if you're not going to listen and you're going to do it anyway, please take or drink at least 8 ounces of water with each pill. That seems like a lot, especially if you're going beyond what you're supposed to, but it really does increase the potency. Just grabbing, you know, several, and then just the minimum amount of like liquid you need to make that go down, you're not getting the full extent, and you're doing a lot more damage. You get a lot more potency out of what you're taking if you consume, like I said, 8 ounces, at least 8 ounces with each pill. I used to be just consistently congested, like all the time. It's amazing what you can get used to and think is normal. Like, never being able to take a deep breath in and out through your nose, like, and of course that's all that has, well, I'm not going to say all of it, about 90% cleared up. Also, you know, sinus issues, and, you know, I would also get, you know, sinus headaches, and that is gone. And although there are going to be a few things on the list here that are, when you get into biological functions and something that basically changes how every part of your body functions, there's going to be some things on the list that you may not want to hear about, but I'm going to try to get through them, like ears getting clogged. And I don't think it was about like wax buildup. I think I was actually getting inflammation inside my ears, and not being able to hear well, it really impacts your quality of life. And it is funny that, like, no matter how bad a situation you're in, if you've had clogged ears for or one or more, you know, it's really bad when it's 2. It's typically just 1. But if you've had a clogged ear for a while and it finally clears up, it's like impossible to not be in a good mood after that. Resist. So And I'm still on, most of this just came from getting rid of the grains. Which would mostly wheat, but also started avoiding corn. Digestion was a big one. And again, it's like, it's amazing what you can get used to if you're introduced to it slowly over time. Apparently, every bowel movement doesn't have to be a tragedy. And I'll leave it at that. I am also lactose intolerant, which it seems to be completely unrelated to the rest of this. But having a digestive tract that's a lot healthier increased my tolerance for dairy, which is kind of nice. I also heal a lot faster, which is really nice when, you know, you got a job that beats the crap out of you. But one of the big ones, and, you know, comes to the meaning thing, is like my quantity and quality of sleep went up so much. Like when I was dealing with the scoliosis thing, I did what some people refer to as the Scoliosis Shuffle, which is if you ever put a person with scoliosis, at least the way it was for me, into like a wooden kitchen chair, that is an implement of torture. And you will see that person just keep shifting their position because you stay in the same position too long, it starts to get painful and you have to find a slightly different position. Well, it was like that with my sleep. Like I could not stay in one position for very long. I would have to keep turning. Even though I was, and you can't be fully asleep if, you know, every hour or two, or maybe even more often than that, you're repositioning yourself because the pain kind of pulls you out of whatever dream or deep sleep you might have been in. And the better breathing also, you know, it kind of amplifies, you know, how well you can sleep. So being able to like just fall asleep and sleep for like 8 hours and wake up and feel like you actually rested. Like it's a fresh new day. It's not just, well, I guess that's all the recovery I'm getting, time to go face the day. Like the morning is a new thing. I am still not a great morning person, but mornings are so, you know, so much better. They got so much better. And with, you know, the things I already mentioned, so much more clarity of thought. Like just being in pain and spending so much mental effort trying to avoid movements and being in positions and things that would make your situation worse. It just, you know, it clogs the mind and, you know, just not getting good sleep. And say, was it in Dune, he said fear is the mind killer, but pain is what turns all of us back into animals. I mean, we are animals, but you're a lot more like an animal when you're in pain. There are some other there were some other benefits, but what I want to move on to now is the history of how I got to where I am. And even though I said, you know, like, you know, 5 years, this story starts longer ago than that. This would be the mid-2000s during the recession. And I had been in printing, and then printing was already dying, and then the recession came and just made sure to kick it in the ribs a few times on the way down. And I was unemployed, and it was difficult to find work, and I was basically living on pizza and pasta and cereal. And all of those things were horrible. The thing is, when I was younger, and I would have been early 30s at this point, early mid 30s. I think mid 30s actually. At any rate, as long as I was, you know, physically active and I had a job where I was very physically active, my metabolism moved fast enough that I could metabolize this stuff without issue. But when I wasn't moving around, kind of sedentary, and most of my diet was grains, particularly wheat. I started to, I'm a fairly, thin person. Right now, I put on some muscle since this time, which was a byproduct of a couple different processes, but that's another story. But right now, about 200 pounds, 6 feet tall, 32-inch waist. But which is basically I was I was the same then, except I didn't quite have as much muscle mass on me, so I was probably like 175, 180, and being sedentary, and just eating, lots of carbs, and a lot of those carbs were coming from grains. I actually developed a little bit of a gut, which is the first time in my life, which is a thing that happens when you get older. And my back got worse, which made no sense to me at the time. It's like I'd kind of been working under the assumption that, it was the labor that I was doing that was complicating my scoliosis. The fact that I was just like sitting at home, so I'm like, it must be how I'm sitting, or I didn't really understand what was happening. And I would get the like, while I was sleeping, my hands would I would wake up because my hands had turned numb, and then I was getting the pins and needles thing, and which was a first and kind of scary. But eventually, after like a year or a little more than a year, I got a job, and I was physically active, and for some reason, I started not eating breakfast and not eating till lunch, and then at lunch there was this amazing burger place where you'd get a burger, but the burger was just enormous. So like most of that meal was just straight up beef. And I noticed that I was feeling better. But I've attributed it to being more active, which was true. But just you fast forward to where, a little bit to where, a few years to where I was mocking the gluten sensitivity people, which I feel I am sort of paying penance for now, which, other than celiac, I think is still mostly bullshit, but we'll get into my theories on these things later. I'll get back to the story. At some point, I was heading down the path of like eating more pizza and pasta, and the idea, I thought I would just, I was hitting a limit of like how much over-the-counter pain reliever I could take, and still be able to go to work, and I did not want to have to go to the doctor and get out, because as soon as they saw my spine, it would be like, oh dude, you can't be doing this kind of thing. And it's like, I like working. I don't want to be sitting at home on disability. That's not going to be good for me, physically or psychologically. But I was at the limit of like the amount of over-the-counter pain reliever I could take, and I almost certainly did some damage, but hopefully that's healed by now. And I just decided I'm getting rid of bread. I'm not going to do any bread. Even though I think the gluten sensitivity thing is bullshit, I'm I don't know what else to do at this point. And I noticed that I was doing better. Not a lot better, but better in general. And I would still have it from time to time. I'd have like cheat days and stuff, but eventually it was just undeniable that, like, especially if I'd gone without it for a while and then I'd have it, and you could actually draw a line between the consumption of the food and the effect, because when you're just saturated with it and you're eating it all the time, you can't make like a cause and effect correlation between what you're eating and the effect on your body. I was also getting more exercise at the time, and I started to get rid of my pooch, my little skinny fat belly, you could call it. Something very, very strange happened. I was also pushing into having more of my diet be meat and less of it be carbs. The very strange thing that happened is that I should also say there were a number of other things that were happening. Sorry, trying to put this in order. I believe this was at the time where I was doing about 70% to 80% of what I was eating was just meat or eggs, chicken, fish, tuna, or dairy. And my body started pushing out. See, in printing, there are these metal burrs all over the place, of different types. Whenever you have like an immense amount of force driven by like gears, you end up with basically metal splinters just being all over the place. Then you get them in you. So basically, in all the places that I could not see to deal with, like the backs of my arms, a lot of my back, part of my ass where, you know, that makes contact when you're sitting down, even on the back of my head, my body started pushing out these like metal splinters that I did not know were there. Which is interesting, you know, it's like my body had found new resources and it was ejecting things that it had previously isolated or sequestered. And that was weird. And I was experiencing a massive, how should I say it? Boost in libido, you could say. These changes cannot be overstated. To call it a second puberty would not be hyperbolic. It was very much like, you know, remembering what it was like to be in high school, to where, you know, I probably shouldn't say this, but like, you figure waking up every morning pitching a tent was a thing of the past. Let's put it that way. And just feeling so much better. But to get back to my little pooch, you know, a little belly that I'd acquired, started itching. Like a lot. And this went on for, it took me probably close to a year to get rid of that thing. And it itched so much. And as it shrunk, it itched even more. And what I think it was is almost all of that fat was acquired when I was eating like basically a grain diet. And as my body was metabolizing the fat stored there, I was having, I think it's more accurate to call it an immune reaction than an allergic reaction, and that there's some overlap there. And this itched more than I would have believed anything could itch. Just, I couldn't believe it. Like, I started to understand now the people, when people talk about like something really, really itching, and they say it feels like I have bugs under my skin. There's a degree of itchiness to where it actually generates the sensation of like movement in a way that your mind conceptualizes it as a foreign body moving around underneath your skin. And itching it felt better than anything else I've probably physically experienced. Even sex. I'm not even kidding. Like, it felt so good to itch that. I even think about it sometimes. I'll think about, man, that's, like fondly reminisce on how good it felt to itch that, but like just astonishingly itchy. But once it got worked down all the way, I thought I was gonna have like scars because it was like it was really hard to resist. I probably could have used like, you know, topical steroids or something to reduce it, but that probably would have required a prescription. You know, I did use some stuff and it did not, I mean, I had to go to work. And it was like at that, the worst spot was like right at the belt line, right where the treasure trail crosses the belt line, you know, it's just irritated all the time. And that event, that once that got worked down, the issue completely evaporated. It was probably like, I don't know, I'd probably get diagnosed as psoriasis or something. I don't know. Dermatitis. I don't know. That itch was astonishing. When I, and to continue, you know, touching, you know, and as my system got less and less saturated with, and the reason I put, you know, kryptonite in quotes or pseudo-kryptonite is, it seems that for me, and maybe 1% of the population out there, I should put this. It appears that virtually all vegetable matter is poisonous. However, you know, basically to keep, you know, bugs from consuming them, they have to make it not worth their while to do so. And that's why when you see a plant in a sorry state, the bugs will come for it. You know, if you ever had a garden. But we sort of co-evolved to deal with the poisons, and when we cultivated certain items, there was probably a selection pressure on less of that poison. Maybe I shouldn't be calling it poison. But I think there's a sliver of the population that just has a problem with it. And I think that's me. So as I became less and less saturated, because your body is made out of what you eat. And the reason I refer to it as kryptonite is like, I was just saturated with it. Every part of my body was constructed by it. Like even the cartilage in my ears, like the outer ear, would become really itchy when I would, apparently when my immune system didn't have other sources of kryptonite to go after. The real tragedy, you know, as I got less saturated, there's a kind of an inverse thing going on. As you become less saturated, when you do consume, let's say, a no-no food, it hits you harder and quicker. So, you know, you kind of get feedback more quickly, but it also sucks. I remember I stupidly, like, I used to love Ritz crackers. And I'm like, oh, look, gluten-free Ritz crackers. Because I didn't really understand all the mechanics of this at the time. And I got a box. And I ate like half of a sleeve because and they weren't even that good. They were kind of hard and, you know, whatever. But it's like, okay, I was not right for like 2 weeks. Like, whatever it is, it's not gluten. And when I finally got back together, like I would, you know, I'd gotten to the point where I'd like order like McDonald's and get burgers, but no bun. Because trace amounts still seem to be okay, you know, like ketchup and relish. Smaller quantities. And then there was a day that I got Wendy's double baconator, and you can get like lettuce instead of a bun. And it caused me a serious problem. And at first I thought that the bacon was like, what do they use? Fake bacon? Like, what is this? You know, like made out of wheat or some crap? Like, and then I realized something like, oh, if beef and chicken, you know, cows and chickens, they're like a food filter. Like they eat the foods that if I ate, they would give me problems. But if I eat the thing eating the food, they basically filter it out to a large degree to where I'm not having the reaction. And apparently pig is a really poor food filter. And that's the day I lost bacon. I miss bacon. Let me check something here. Okay. And, you know, and the trend continued to where, like, I would get better feedback on what foods were messing me up. And, like, I'd lose corn, lose tomatoes, you know, which was basically tomato paste, you know, sauce, what do you call it? Marinara sauce, spaghetti sauce, onions, peppers. Although, you know, oddly enough, you know, the more processed something is, the less I react to it. So, like Teddy's Red Hot sauce, I seem to be able to have as much of that as I would seem to want to without a reaction, which is good. Eventually lost potatoes and onions. Recently, just very recently, lost, like, I was using like country gravy mix to have with like beef or chicken, and but lost that recently. Big loss was rice. I figured rice has to be safe. It's so simple, but right now, if I were to just eat like a cup of rice, here's what would happen. Almost immediately I'd start getting a headache, but it's not like a migraine or a cluster headache type. It's like the standard headache, which is so novel to me. Like, oh, so this is the kind of headaches other people have, you know? Oh, so, you know, it's like the front of the forehead, top of the head, you know, and it's more of an ache and not a pain. Because why do they always call it headaches, you know? Because this shit hurts. It's like, oh, for most people it is just an ache. Okay. So I would get an immediate headache from the rice. Within a couple hours, I'd be feeling it in my joints. Also, during this time, my sinuses would, you know, probably clog a little bit. I'd have some congestion, probably some phlegm. Might even experience a sore throat, but I'd get very thirsty. And if this is very much like an immune reaction. So today, my safe foods are beef, chicken, eggs, and mushrooms. Now, we'll end, surprisingly, sugar. Sugar seems to be fine. Don't seem to have any reaction to it, which is, thank God. And I do quite well with dairy. And things with like trace amounts of like vegetable matter seems to be okay. Now, obviously, you know, it's going to be hard to get all of the nutrients that I need, so I have to take supplements. The irony of the supplements is I actually have a reaction to the supplements, and I haven't found one that I don't have. But the reaction isn't that bad. It's maybe, I don't know, it's much less than the rice, and you know it gets through me pretty quick. So it's not horrible, but it's like, really? I literally can't get what I need without some kind of reaction. Oh well. I'm not complaining. My life is so much better now than, you know, basically every point since, since like 30. Maybe 25. I was talking about the idea, you know, basically my body treats it like kryptonite, that I have an immune reaction to it. And I think this kind of gives a glimpse to the normal function of these things. I think that all humans have an immune reaction to the poisons. I shouldn't call it poisons. Let's call it microdose poisons. Microdose of poisons that are in our food. I think everybody does, but some of us have a rather extreme reaction to it, and may have, you know, greater or lesser reactions to different types. This might be part of why, you know, so many people have a problem with wheat. And, you know, and animals are basically food filters. I believe this is true because of some supporting, evidence, a bit anecdotal, but it appears that people with arthritis, if they fast, if they just can go like a day or two without like, you know, eating, you know, apparently you can drink, but if you eat like, basically if you fast, their symptoms diminish significantly, but you know, of course they have to eat again at some point and then it comes back. I think this might also be why before, I'm not saying this is the understanding, but I think this might be part of the underlying mechanic of why they don't let you eat. They don't want you to eat like 24 or 48 hours before surgery, because the microdose of plant poisons is what keeps your immune system healthy. It gives your immune system something to do when it's not under attack, which is also why I think with a lot of illnesses, one of the symptoms is a loss of appetite. It's like your body understands that it needs to reallocate immune resources from the fairly innocuous, you know, food poisons to this foreign biological entity attacking your body. I think that's most of what I wanted to get through. If I am going to give any advice, it would be, I think I mentioned it earlier, that do try to commit to 3 days, preferably a week, but if you are someone who's going to benefit from eliminating vegetable matter from your diet, you will notice within a few days, and it's really not that bad. You can survive on, you know, beef, chicken, eggs, and dairy, and probably even sugar, but a lot of people seem to have a problem with sugar that I don't have. I'm not sure what that's about. But if you're a person who's going to see benefit, you will probably see a benefit in a few days. So, you know, just, I would say definitely do it as a diagnostic diet. Also, if you do suffer from migraines or inflammatory joint pain, because that's one of the things that pushed me over, is I'd realized that not just going on straight meat was almost certainly associated with a lack of inflammation. And one time when I felt a cluster headache coming on, because it's kind of like, it doesn't just like blast you out of nowhere. You start to feel the hints of it. You can almost, you can feel it just kind of massing at your border a little. And at one time when I had this, I'm like, I was terrified, you know. And if you've experienced that, you know, fear is the proper reaction to knowing that you're about to enter a cluster headache cycle. Sorry if I'm getting quiet. And I'm like, fuck this. And I just went like beef and water for like 2 days, which is a bit extreme. And the cycle never came. And I knew it was coming because, you know, you see it coming. I then later, you know, screwed up and got lazy and had too many cheat days and initiated another cycle, but, you know, going back to straight meat. And it dissipated within like a day or two, and it never reached the same level, nowhere near the level of extremity that I'd experienced in the past. And now I am headache free, except when I eat cheat foods. And freaking rice is a cheat food now. I have dreams about just like sitting there and eating a bowl of rice with some butter on it. Like, so good. I've given up on pizza. You know, I used to dream about pizza. It's like, no, that's never happening. Powdered eggs. There is a lot that you can do with powdered egg. You can almost make pasta out of it. And I use it when I'm making foods. I'll use it where you might use pasta. Like if you get the mixture right, it can act as like pasta in your dishes. And I haven't found any pasta of any kind that I don't react to. You'd think there'd be some kind of egg pasta out there already, but I haven't had any luck. Everybody, I guess in conclusion, everybody's different. Try the diagnostic carnivore diet to see if you benefit. If you do go on it, you will need to supplement what you're not getting from your food anymore. A lot of people have problems with sugar. You should probably knock that out at the same time, but I would say it's not necessary. This has been Grinding Meaning number 32. The Carnivore Diet, Pseudo-Kryptonite, and a War of Attrition. You all have a great day.